Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat, I'm your host. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about creating art, and especially those of us who struggle with knowing what to create, how to create it. The thing I've had to learn throughout my own journey is that the best way to do this is to turn inward first and to look at yourself and what you want to experience, and then projecting that out into the world. Because inevitably there's somebody out there who relates to you, who is just like you in many ways, and maybe not like you in some ways too. But that's the beauty of life. There are so many people who are just like us, who need to hear things the way we say them and the way that they relate to us. There is inevitably something that's good for you that will be good for somebody else too. And I say this because through my own journey of creating content like this, I've been doing it for almost 2 years now. A lot of comments that I get in my videos is that the things that I'm saying, don't relate to everybody, or how can I be saying things that are just my experience and maybe I shouldn't be saying. And it's like, no, that's the point, right? The art we create should be exactly for you because there's somebody out there just like you. It's not that you're creating just for a single person that in no way relates or is understandable to anybody else. There are so many people out there that are just like you, and they just need to experience what you're experiencing, or at least hear it articulated in a way that allows them to tap into that experience. Because there's many times where I've shared something very personal to me, or something that I've experienced very specifically, and I've tried my best to really capture the feeling or the experience in a way that I truly understand, and then put it into words in a way that I hope somebody else would understand. Now, I don't create content specifically to be understood by people. That's not the point of it. The point is for me to understand me. All the content I create is about me, for me, that I say to me. So anything I'm talking about, it's to me. If I say a you, I'm not talking about other people that I think I know more than, so they should listen to me. The you I'm talking to is me. It's a collective you. It represents me and everyone like me. And I think this is the best way to approach it. It's what's helped me. So I don't create content thinking, okay, what's something my audience would really like to hear? What's something that would really benefit people? I don't do it that way because I know that inevitably something that benefits me will benefit somebody else. I don't even have to try. I just have to look into myself, ask myself, okay, what am I struggling with? What have I struggled with? What have I learned about this thing that I'm struggling with? And how can I articulate it in a way for me to look back on potentially at some point in the future that would help me? How would it be beneficial for me to say this to myself? Or have I said this to myself before and it's helped me feel better? And that's it. And again, that is the beauty of art, because I think many of us who create any kind of art, right? And I'm talking in general here, even though I'm using my own specific example. I think many of us feel like we have to understand specifically what's going to hit for people, what exactly I have to do, how I have to do it to get the audience, to get the validation, the attention, to have people say, oh yeah, this is amazing, this is great. You don't have to do anything other than make it enjoyable and relevant for you. It's like the simplest thing, but I know it's easier said than done, right? Because there's a lot of self-trust that has to go into that. There's a lot of risk taking that goes into that. There's a lot of vulnerability as well, right? Because it is a very vulnerable thing to create something that's from deep within you rather than creating something for somebody else. And I guess the distinction can be if you maybe are a writer, as an example, and the distinction being between your writing, the writing you think is most personal. Maybe you do personal essays like I do, and you talk about your life and your experiences, versus maybe being a writer for a company, right? Writing content for them, creating content that would be relevant to their audience, their ideal customers, whatever. It can be easier and safer to do the latter, right? Writing for a brand, a business, B2B writing, whatever. It's not vulnerable, it's not personal, it's not scary. There's no risk necessarily involved with that when it comes to sharing yourself. But the former example, writing personal essays, is closer to you. There's more vulnerability there. There is more risk in letting someone truly see you and also truly seeing yourself, because it does require you to really look at yourself. And that is what all art is. It's truly deeply looking at yourself and in a way turning yourself inside out and letting everybody else see you as well. So scary, so uncomfortable, and yet some of the most beneficial work you can do as a human being. And that's what I love about any kind of art. It is just a human being's way of experiencing the world and putting it into some sort of medium to be understood by somebody else in that specific way. And that's been my favorite thing about the books I've read throughout my life. There are books and writers who have such a way with expressing exactly what they've experienced that it hits home for me to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think other people experienced this specific thing. That is something that I've always wanted to be able to do. And I didn't realize that what you really have to do is just look inward, just talk to yourself, just look at yourself and have a conversation with yourself, almost holding up a mirror to yourself in some way. Now, I know this can sound almost a bit self-centered, and it can feel that way sometimes. I think a lot of creatives also struggle with that feeling of, I'm just like looking at myself all the time, constantly. I'm especially if you create video content too, right? Literally looking at your videos, your face over and over again. It can be a bit disorienting to constantly be looking at yourself all the time. You might end up feeling like you are losing your footing, losing some of your grounding in reality. That is fair, that is valid. I think that is a common experience for artists of any kind, especially if you approach it from this place of looking at yourself, exploring yourself, articulating yourself. It can feel that way sometimes. But if you are struggling with understanding how to best do that for you, right? Maybe you've been trying to do various forms of art in some way or creativity in some way, and nothing's ever really clicked for you. Either you haven't found an audience that your work resonates with, or it just doesn't feel deeply connected to you in some way. It might be that you're not turning inwards enough. You might not be looking at yourself enough to be able to then express your truth to somebody else who also gets it. And that's the key, right? Making sure that you're doing things that other people just get because you get it. So you first have to really understand yourself. And part of the act of creating, part of the act of making art is understanding yourself. So it kind of works in tandem like that. In order to create meaningful work, you have to understand yourself. And the way to understand yourself is by creating the work. And I know that sounds almost complicated, but you just have to start doing that work. And then over time, you become more and more aware of yourself and understanding of yourself. And then become better at actually articulating and expressing yourself and using that as a tool for connection among other people. And obviously, this is easier said than done. It takes time. It took me a long time in my own journey, in my own work, to understand how to best express myself, how to best express what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing. Because I spent years doing a lot of introspection with my journaling and understanding things for myself and, mulling things over, ruminating a lot about these things, but never spent a lot of time actually expressing them. When I started doing that and I started learning what best works in terms of my self-expression and how people can relate to it, right? What is the most honest and authentic I can be for me, that will inevitably be authentic and honest for somebody else like me. So first you have to understand what that authenticity is for you. What does that mean for you to be open and honest? Are there things that you're hiding from yourself? Are there things that you don't want to look at? Are there things that you're scared of expressing outwards? If so, you have to really look at those things, really dive into them, explore them more, understand them better, understand what the fear is, what the resistance is, and then let it flow out in whatever medium works for you. It could be writing, it could be video creation, it could be painting, it could be anything. I think all of that requires a lot of vulnerability and authenticity. And that can be really difficult to do. But the moment you start doing it, the easier and easier it becomes. And then you recognize that there are people out there that actually connect with that. They understand it. And then when you see someone else understanding it, you understand yourself even better. When you get that validation, not from like an egoic place of, I need it to feel good about myself. When you get the validation of, you're not alone in this experience. Others are like you. Others get it. When you get that validation and that reinforcement, it allows you to feel even more motivated to create. It fuels you even more. And I think that is so important for an artist as well, to have that external fuel as well. Not just the internal fuel, right? We do need that, of course, but also having it externally and having it from the right places, not the wrong kind of fuel, again, which is maybe rooted in more egoic needs or egoic desires rather. Getting it from a source that is aligned and authentic for you based on your own authenticity and self-expression and the way you show up. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was motivating and inspiring for any other artists out there or creatives or anything. If you want to talk about this in more detail, you can book a one-to-one call with me. If you want to read my work on these topics, you can follow me over on Substack. And you can follow all my other social media accounts as well, where I post most of my other content. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.